Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're in sunny Essex at the North Weald Airfield for Wings and Wheels 2018. As usual, the first place I went after the usual quick pass of the traders was to the Tamia track-in layout. I think they could do with a rostrum of some sort like the racetracks. As the guys are always wandering about, it can make spectating a bit tricky, but I'm not sure what you can do to improve things with the space that they have. I think the main issue is you're happily filming, then suddenly truck drivers crack. One of these days I'll actually get around to joining up, maybe in time for the London Model Engineering Expo. I should really look into it while the motivation's still there. Next up on the strip we have the Panik bipes. These are fairly small models, usually overpowered with a suitably outrageous engine or motor. One of the standard issue UK models I've still yet to build. You can get an ARTF version from J Perkins, and I think the laser cut kit is still available from Hovercraft. It's one of those models like the Chris Foss Watt 4 that came out just right. There were a few jets doing their thing of going really fast doing circuits with the odd roll and loop. This one though has vectored thrust, so it can do some more interesting aerobatics. If they were more affordable, and you could safely take off and land on a small field, I could be tempted to try one. But for the amount that they cost, there's a lot of other toys I could buy instead. Up at the entrance end of the show is the fairly famous Wings and Wheels Bring and Buy. It's not what it used to be, but that's more to do with what people are buying and thus selling these days. 10 years ago there was always over a dozen older Glow models with good engines to choose from for a reasonable price. These days it's 30% fairly large scale models, 60% electric and 10% 40 size Glow. Quite often they're priced far too high too. I know second-hand pricing is difficult, but as a buyer I'm after a bargain, not a 10% discount on a nearly new model. I did end up with one though. I ummed and ahed a bit as it was a bit of a tank, but I do like a good old RC project. You can actually see the wingtip right here. This was recorded in the morning and the model was still there in the afternoon, so I kind of felt a bit sorry for it, and we'll end up having a quick look at the end of the video. At the boat pool now, and we have a nice hovercraft. No idea what was under the lid, but it was electric and had a knack of getting stuck in the corners. I'm going to assume it didn't have any sort of reverse. I didn't see many boats floating, so this is really the only bit of video. Every time I went by the pool there wasn't anybody there, but that was probably just bad timing on my part. Back to the flying, we've got this homemade model with 4 40 size Glow engines. Apparently he got it from someone else and then rebuilt it. All very nice, but the clip I filmed shows one of the classic problems. When filming, I can either stand in front of people on folding chairs and block their view, and I obviously avoid that, or I end up beside some sort of very opaque object, in this case a portaloo. The only way around it is to get there really early and set up on your own folding chairs right up against the flight line rope and stay there all day. Or get lucky with positioning, which really doesn't happen very often. The show itself, while still a very nice day out, has shrunk yet again. I'd have a guess that there was at least a dozen traders missing from last year. I can understand why. I know I compare prices to what I can get online, and most of the time it isn't favourable for the traders. There are of course a few good deals if you look hard enough. I got some servos from Inward Models and an Any Loop receiver pack from Component Shop, both for prices around what you can find online. It's more that while you're at the show it's convenient to grab some bits and bobs. Back home now, and here's what I got from the Bring and Buy. It's an MFA Yamamoto with a wooden fuselage rather than the fiberglass one. It's got a foam veneer wing and it weighs a ton. A classic 3-channel trainer, built to take some rather dodgy landings. As far as I can tell, the kit dates from 1975, but the well-worn Futaba S148 suggests this one's probably from the early 90s. It's still quite an old timer. Up front we've got an Enya 35, which isn't the most powerful engine ever, but considering the state of the model it's been well used, so it must be a working combination. It's a bit sticky with old castor oil, but the prop does turn over quite nicely. I've not installed a radio, so for throttle I've connected up a servo tester. Not ideal, as I have to get up and walk around the model to avoid reaching through the prop, but it'll do the job. It's also worth mentioning I've tied the tail down so the model can't lurch forward if it does manage to start at full throttle. I've put some fuel in the tank and I've given the carb a quick squirt directly down the intake. The glow stick doesn't want to lock onto the plug, so I'm going to have to hold it into position. A little bit dodgy, but we've got a nose wheel, so it's all quite stable. With a couple of flicks, the engine fired up quite well, but it's running backwards. Not uncommon, but at least it's running. After a bit more fiddling around, I found the main needle was all gummed up, again with old caster. I used the trick of opening up the half throttle, then pumping fuel into the tube that connects the exhaust to the tank. It pressurizes the tank and blows fresh fuel past the needle. You have to be gentle and very carefully watch out that you don't completely flood the engine. You can see now that it's been running backwards a bit, the engine has freed up well. There's no sign of flooding, so with the glow start we can try again. And there we go, running forwards, and it was long enough that it must have been pulling fuel from the tank. I think with a bit of a carb cleanup it's going to run like a champ. It should be a fun little model to chuck about once it's all up and running. And that's going to be it for this week. Normal service should return next week with either some G-made GOM or perhaps a bit more of the 3D printed Series 2. It largely depends on what the postman brings. So, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if you want to see a vintage Enya Airbleed carburettor taken to bits. Bye guys!